There are five meaningful moments that I've had in Israel over the last 20 years plus. In fact, over 25 trips to Israel, there are five nothing short of miraculous moments that I could only pray and hope you would experience something short thereof. That being said, I think about going to Israel with 50 pastors during the Gaza war back in early 2017, 2016. I think about five meaningful and nothing short of miraculous moments I've experienced in Israel over the last 15 plus years. In fact, I've been to Israel 25 times over the last several years. I've taken hundreds of pastors, hundreds of ministry leaders from across America, particularly in the African American community. And when I think about the why would anyone go that many times? What is it that's so important and so special about Israel? Well, let me just tell you this. Here's a catch. It's not all of the traditional Holy Land tourist sites most of you would expect. In fact, it was somewhere between 2014, 15, during one of the Gaza war skirmishes. I was asked to accompany another 49 pastors to Israel, particularly in the middle of the war. We actually went and spent time with the IDF. We spent time with some governmental leaders. The goal was to let the world know that there were Christian pastors in America that were standing in solidarity with the Jewish people and the state of Israel. In fact, we were there in a little town called Sderot. They nicknamed that place Rocket City. And you can imagine why. It's one of the most populated, smallest cities there near Gaza, there in the south. It was an amazing moment there, but it was a frightening moment because you could actually see there the enemy as they could see you. But here's one of the special miracle moments of that particular trip. It was in Sderot that we had sort of forgotten that years prior, in 2007, 2008, we'd actually purchased a bomb shelter there, not knowing that the day would come, I'd actually be in that same small town, seeing the bomb shelter with my name, with our church's name, and the fact that in the middle of a regular day, our friends and brothers and sisters there have less than 90 seconds to find a nearest bomb shelter. So to be in that same town, that same city was so special to know that our hard work, our giving, and our support was not in vain. Number two, I think about the time we danced. Yes. Can you imagine that? Had about 30, 40 Pentecostal older gentlemen from all over the United States. We're in a place called Tiberias up in the north at a restaurant called Dex. It was there that evening. We were having dinner as a group, and these young Israeli kids from Chicago, they were on a birthrights passage trip. The Black Eyed Peas were singing their famous song, "Tonight's going to be a good night," and "I've got a feeling it's going to be a good night." Well, they were in the middle of the floor dancing, and we're looking at them with our very pious and sanctified and old selves, and they were like, "Come join us, come join us." And you guessed it, it just took one of us, right? About 3, 4, 5 minutes later, all of the pastors, yes, all of the pastors were on the dance floor with all these young Israeli kids, and we were just having a ball. We were singing and dancing in circles, and it was just a beautiful, again, a moment that you could not have scripted, a moment you could not have guessed. I'll never forget that night at that restaurant there in Tiberias. You know, on the other end of this unfortunate spectrum, I think about the time I went and sat with a family. Did not know, but it was a tradition called sitting Sheba. It was when unfortunately, one of the young Israelis was murdered there in Israel, but at the hands of, I think it was Hamas at that time. And we were invited to sit in the home with the family. Didn't know anything about the tradition or the custom, but we learned that night what a sitting Sheba was. If the family wanted to cry, we cried. If the family wanted silence, we sat in silence. If the family decided to laugh, we laughed. It was just called what we call in the United States the ministry of presence, just to sit with the family during some of the darkest moments of that family's life. I will never forget that moment. It has stuck with me all these years. One year, we took a group of ladies. My wife and I were asked to lead a group of ladies to Israel. So this was considered the first ladies tour. And it was one of our smaller groups, but we had about 20 young African-American women, older African-American women. And, again, it's not just the regular tourist stops and all of the popular things we do, but that year in particular, we stopped at what's called the Coretta Scott Forest, the Coretta Scott King forest. Yes, there is a forest named after the late Coretta Scott King, wife of Dr. Martin Luther King. And in that forest, and by the way, totally unexpected, right? These ladies found value planting a tree in that forest. Who would have thought these prissy, dainty first ladies of churches would get on their knees, put on some gloves, and plant trees? And when we had the debriefing afterwards, the conversation went something like this. We now know we're leaving something in Israel that will grow and grow and grow. They may never come back, and many of them probably will and did. But to know that they left something in the land, it was this very sort of symbolic of a land that at one time was sparse and dry and almost lifeless. But now it is a epicenter and an icon of fruitfulness and flourishing and plush landscaping. That was a moment we'll never forget. And then finally, I think about being at the border of Lebanon. One of my first trips to Israel back in the early 2000s, I went with Pastor John Hagee, his wife Diana Hagee, and some of the foremost leaders of Christian Zionism of the United States of America. It was more of a diplomatic, political type kind of Zionist. This is why we're here, and we understand the biblical, we understand the theological, but now let's talk about the moral and maybe even the national perspective. Well, we were on a bus and we were there at the border of Lebanon, not too quite sure where, but I do remember we were at a special kibbutz that was more military ran, but they took us so to the border. And what was interesting about this particular stop on the border was we were able to look and see those, I guess, Hezbollah, who were in the north. They could see us as we watched them. You know, of course, I'm trusting but trembling, right? I'm like, oh boy, what have I got myself into? But the reality was it was intentional that these enemies of Israel could see that Israel was not alone, Israel is not alone, and Israel will never be alone. Because we've got the great United States of America who stands in solidarity, Christians from all over the world who stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters. Now, interesting enough, that field that we stood in at the border, I mean, I'm talking wires and fences and the nine. You know, they would point out cars and say, you see that car way over in the yonder? You see that car in the distance? Well, that's Hezbollah. They're watching us as we're watching them. Interesting enough, in that particular terrain of that region, we had in front of us kiwi. Yes, kiwi fields. It was kiwi. They were growing kiwis and flowers and different things. But across the border, less than 50 to 75 yards, the same fertile grounds that Israel uses to grow fruit and produce, Hezbollah was using those same exact grounds to grow poppy seeds and seeds of drugs and illegal drugs and things of the nature. Amazing. What a narrative. What a story. Why Israel uses the same soil, the same dirt, the same fertilization for the life of fruit and things that are positive. They were using the same soil and fertilizations in areas for things that are destructive. Again, you can't make these things up. I encourage you. If you've never been to Israel, cancel out all of the Western biases. Cancel out all of the fear of, oh, I'm going to get bombed, I'm going to get attacked. Listen, you are more safer in Israel than you are in Chicago, New York, Alabama, North Carolina. You are safer there than you are wherever you live at here in the United States of America. All of the apartheid conversations and, oh, Israel is so hard and demanding on its neighbors. You'll come home in 10 days with a whole new perspective and ideology that Israel is not the bad guy or the bully in the Middle East. In fact, she is surrounded 650 times enemy nations, not friendly people, but enemy nations who many of them want her off the face of the earth. But you know what? God is faithful because he who keeps Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. 25 plus times. And I've been there with big, giant groups. Been there by myself. Not one time have I ever felt unsafe. Have I ever felt threatened, even as an African American there in the greatest democracy in the Middle East. My time is up. Thank you so much for watching. Listen, if this video has been of any encouragement to you, if it's been of any value, two things that I ask, please subscribe, like, share. But importantly, share this with someone, particularly in the African American community or particularly in the Christian community, who they've got their hangups, they've got their biases, they've got their hesitations about traveling to Israel. We'd love to see you come and enjoy yourselves there in the Middle East, the land of the Bible. God bless.